talking about SNL, the history, the mysteries, and all the hot impressions in between, breaking down all the numbers as well. In your favorite sketches with special guests, it's on the Saturday Night Network.
Yes, welcome on in, everybody, to the Saturday Night Network for another edition of our weekly roundtable, this time coming to you to talk about the Timothée Chalamet episode of Saturday Night Live. We are here on a Tuesday, one of the rare Tuesdays in SNL Network, Saturday Night Network, SNL Stats history that we're live on a Tuesday, but we are here to talk through all of the best moments from that episode of Saturday Night Live. We are, of course, here as a presentation of latenighter.com, and I'm very excited to get into this really historic episode, some very unique stuff that we got to see. So first, let's bring in one of the great SNL analysts around. Sammy Kay is here. Sammy, how are you?
John, I'm doing well. This is like when they did Weekend Update on Thursday. Just like everything's askew. No, I'm super excited to be here tonight to talk about a historic episode, as well as we're knocking on the door of SNL 50. So just a lot of exciting stuff to get into.
Yeah, we got a lot of really fun stuff to talk about. This is like, we're on the precipice of this major anniversary show. So we got to talk through this one, and then we're going to get to all of our coverage of SNL 50 coming up over the next few weeks. And someone who I know is very excited for that anniversary special is the great Halle Dowden-Parrott. Halle, how are you?
I'm doing good, John. I feel honored to be here on the last roundtable for the last episode before all of the big 50th stuff. And I'm feeling really good. I've got a lot to say about this episode and a lot of good stuff. A little positivity for everyone's Tuesday. So I'm looking forward to it, yes. Even though my calendar for the rest of the week mentally is going to be thrown off. It's a Monday to me.
I know I am so OCD, and I just I really operate every week by the days of the week. So for me, I'm so thrown off tonight, but we are here. It's Tuesday. We're going to have some fun. And truly the reason why we are here on a Tuesday and we weren't live last night is because there was a documentary that came out on NBC last night at 8 p.m. Eastern that we didn't want all the listeners to watch us instead of the documentary. So as opposed to us going live and competing with them, we decided to sit back and watch the 3 hours of SNL music. And just that, ladies and gentlemen, 50 years of SNL music was incredible to get to see from Questlove, Oz Rodriguez. I know a lot of people worked on that. So for me, I'm going to put this out there. Could be the greatest documentary ever created for Saturday Night Live. It was that good. The opening 7 minutes, I know it got put online, and just the music mashup that was created for that was unbelievable. So definitely go check that out. If you got that recorded or you have a chance to go watch it on Peacock, definitely do so. We are also joined here by Morgan Killoren as well. So let's bring in Morgan. Morgan, how are you?
Hey guys, my computer was giving me some problems, but I'm so excited to be here. So excited to talk about the episode on this lovely Tuesday evening.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into this one with you as well, Morgan. So let's talk about it. Let's dive in. Let's talk about Timothée Chalamet, who hosts this episode for the third time. He has become one of the biggest stars in the world and is obviously right now fishing for that Oscar. He's been nominated for his role as Bob Dylan in A Complete Unknown. And, there's been a lot of talk of Timothée Chalamet over the last few years because his hosting appearances have all been fairly close together, 46, 49, and now 50. But this is the first time he was doing double duty or was scheduled to do double duty, which was really rare and unusual to get a host who is a traditional actor also be the musical guest. There's been all different scenarios where we've had headliners. Sometimes we have hosts who do perform music while they have additional musical guests. But this was a pretty unique situation, especially for modern times. And I thought it was really great of SNL, whether the decision came from Timothée, people, his publicists, his agents, his managers, or it came from SNL to put this together. I thought it was a really exciting prospect. So Halle, let me start with you on this one. What did you think when Timothée Chalamet was booked to host this episode?
I kind of am the ideal target demographic for Timothée Chalamet. I love the dude. I was thrilled when I saw him as a host, as I am every time they've announced him as a host. But it was the musical guest announcement that really, like, the buzz surrounding that was unlike any musical guest I feel like I've seen recently. Even if, like, the biggest of musical guests, it's so unexpected. And it makes so much sense with a complete unknown. I was a little bit bummed we didn't get like a Timmy Tim situation. That's where I know Timothée Chalamet from musically, but I saw a lot of memes about it. I was thrilled. It piqued my interest, and it was like a really good switch up going into the 50th, like a good unique position to be in.
Yeah, to me, it's always really exciting when SNL breaks formats, and they typically in modern times only do it in little ways. Like sometimes they'll do something that's extremely meta, or they'll do a runner, and we're like, oh wow, they're finally going back to this. But to get somebody who come in who you didn't expect to perform music, even though he was great as Bob Dylan in this movie, and then to actually pull it off, I think is a really exciting prospect. So Sammy, you were actually with me the last time Timothée Chalamet hosted the show. You did the Hot Take show that week, and I know you were very excited about him coming back. So how did you feel about him being booked to do some double duty in season 50?
Yeah, this was super exciting for me as somebody who SNL, along with just movies and the Oscars in general, are like my two big passions. So somebody who's been following this awards race, the big storyline in that world is, Adrian Brody for The Brutalist and Timothée Chalamet for A Complete Unknown. And this is like such an amazing chess move. Again, we don't know whose idea this was, if it was SNL or his team or whatever, but this is just awesome. And again, like you said, to do this 50 years into a show's run, he even mentions it in his monologue. It's just very cool and very honestly ballsy and risky for him to do this because he is not somebody, obviously he is able to sing in a movie, but there's just so much post-production and things that go into that, to where being able to perform live on stage, it's a live show. It was such a big risk, and I think he totally pulled it off personally. From obviously the hosting standpoint, we weren't worried about, but from the musical guest standpoint as well, I thought he absolutely killed it. And yeah, to me, this is to see him become such a friend of the show, after his first two shows. In retrospective, a lot of weird stuff going on around them. Obviously, he hosts during the COVID season, and then he hosts right after the actor strike or the writer strike ends, and they acknowledge that in his monologue. So this is kind of his first sort of normal episode, so to speak. And yeah, it's just been awesome to see arguably the biggest movie star of his generation. They're becoming that way, become such a big friend of the show. So that this has all been super exciting. And I think the episode delivered.
Definitely. Morgan, what did you think when Timothée Chalamet was booked to host the show?
I mean, at first, I was obviously very excited for him to be the host. And then at first, when we saw he was musical as well, I kind of had that initial thought like, oh, like, what's he going to sing? Like, what songs is he going to be bringing to the table here? And then obviously he has his Bob Dylan moment. But no one was like 100% sure like what he was going to actually be singing or where it was coming from. But I really like enjoyed seeing.
Are you guys still getting Morgan, or is she frozen for you?
Frozen.
Okay. All right, Morgan, if you couldn't hear us, just maybe drop out and come back in. And then Sammy, let me turn to you because we don't have anything for Morgan right now. I would love to just know, and this is where I was going to go next with this discussion, is that I want to ask you about Timothée Chalamet's legacy at Saturday Night Live, because when we did our host countdown in the summer, Timothée Chalamet, after just 2 episodes, came in at 57. So he didn't crack the top 50. We didn't get to talk about him, but he was right outside there. Now, after 3 episodes, are we talking about somebody that has the prospect of being a top 50 host of all time? Is it too early, or does maybe him even pushing himself to do double duty guarantee him a slot if we were ever to go back to that list in the future?
Wow, that's so interesting to see him at 57, because it is hard to think about when making these lists. The more recent people as we're doing this. They're still in, sort of the upward trajectory of their SNL career. They haven't. I don't think this is the apex of the Chalamet SNL history. I think this is such a monumental moment for him, but I really do feel like this is something that could lead to a 5-timer situation. But yeah, I mean, I think those first 2 episodes, like I said before, definitely impacted by stuff that was going on around it. But I think he ultimately delivered in those episodes, and he created kind of viral moments. And, it's hard to say if you do that rap roundtable with, another host of sort of that similar type, or a tiny horse like that, do those go as viral as they do? I'm not quite sure. So I think, his level of star power, he's for me delivered on the show every time he's been out there. So yeah, would be very curious to see where he would land on the list if we were to do it again. I mean, if Pedro Pascal can crack the top 50 after just one hosting appearance, I don't think it's crazy to think Chalamet should be in the conversation. And at 57, he was super close.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because this may not be it for him. The story may not be written as far as how many times he hosts the show. And what we had is something similar to a lot of, recurring hosts where they have these characters that are themes from their episodes. So you had the tiny horse, giant horse, you had the rap round table. And I know that the smoke cheddar to Asgetta character was actually cut from a sketch in this episode, but because it was cut and we never saw it, it doesn't exist in this show anymore. So because of that, it's interesting to compare number 3 for Chalamet to the first 2, where you had these viral moments and these characters from those sketches that he was in, and they're not in the third one. And it's not so dissimilar to like a Scarlett Johansson who had the like that sketch with Fred where he's the marble columns, or Tom Hanks, Mr. Short-Term Memory, where he's in the couple of them, but not in others. Like there are hosts that have these sketches in arcs throughout their hosting career. So I am curious when it's all said and done, how we'll look at Chalamet. But just after 3 episodes, Halle, where does the legacy of Timothée Chalamet as a host stand for you?
He is creating, like you said, I don't necessarily think his journey is over yet. I would not be shocked to see him return, just based on his popularity. I'm sure he'll have big acting projects to promote in the future. But from what we've seen of him so far, he has secured a spot in terms of my favorite hosts that I've seen in my lifetime, especially in the last decade or so. These 3 hosting appearances have all landed for me, and I was a little bit hesitant with this one because I was like, what if these characters that he's had in the first and second appearance are overdone? What if they're not leaning on these? Is it still going to be as good of an episode without these things that we know are viral and we know people like? And honestly, not having those things almost made the episode better for me because it opened up more room for things that were just so out of left field or so unexpected for me that landed more than I think unexpected but guaranteed to go viral sketch would have. So I'm feeling really optimistic about hopefully Timothee's future as a host, and I would watch him host every day of my life if I could. He throws himself into all of these sketches in a way that it's not like we don't see hosts do that, but it's so complimentary to the cast and to the way that they write for him that it all comes together so well. It's hard to have a complete miss for me in a Timothée episode.
It's funny, when I was watching Marty Short's 5-Timers Club cold open and I was seeing all these major stars come in there at Christmas, the thought crossed my mind of that a lot of these people may be done hosting the show. Post season 50, when there's not all this hype about the show anymore, or at least calms down a little bit. I do wonder, if the big names are ever going to come back around again, and that maybe SNL will start thinking about who are these hosts in modern day times that are going to come back again and again and be the stars that are going to continue to carry through. Emma Stone is there and she's really young still. So she's in the 5-Timers Club. So certainly I would count her in that mix. Adam Driver, who wasn't in the 5-Timers Club yet, but probably will be at a certain point. John Mulaney. I think those are all the big hosts of modern day times. Morgan, for you, does Timothée Chalamet fit in with that group yet? Do you think that he is one of the best current modern day hosts?
I think he is. And I feel like everyone just respects him so much. And he's definitely proven himself, even for being like so young and really just like throwing himself in there and not really caring, honestly, what anyone thinks of him. He just like gives it his all and just like really fits in with the cast, kind of like what Halle said. And I think that like he's definitely very iconic and he's probably like very open to doing kind of like anything that they're throwing at him. And he's definitely very like great at that acting. And he has that funny, quirky side to him too, which really fits in with everything that's going on. So I definitely loved seeing him back. And I think he will be back for multiple years and for multiple times again. Definitely will hit the 5-timers club, I think, coming soon, because he's just like so relevant right now. And he's going to be in so many more films and maybe in television, or who knows? I mean, maybe his singing career will continue to take off too, or maybe Broadway. Yeah, that's another thing. I feel like you just never know with him and what he's going to do. He went from Willy Wonka to Bob Dylan. Like, you just don't know what's going to happen with him. And also, he's just definitely in the spotlight right now too, dating like Kylie Jenner, which is huge. So we'll see kind of where that takes him.
My choice would be to give it a few more years before he comes back. And that's not a knock on how good he is, but I just really think like to become these great hosts, I think we need time. And I don't know that we need him to come back every single season. It was cool to get him a couple seasons in a row, but I think going from 46 to 49 was a good break. I think we can go from 50 to 52 or 53 without having to see him in 51. So that's, again, not to say that he didn't carry a lot of sketches in this episode. And I think he was really fantastic in so many of them. So we're going to talk about that in a moment, but let's jump into this episode with the cold open that we saw here. So this is the first cold open since Trump is now president again. So I have been saying for weeks, for months, SNL has a complete blank slate. They can do anything they want with James's impression of Trump because there's no baggage of Baldwin from the first administration. They don't have to go back to some of the things that they were doing then, bringing in these cameos. They could take this wherever they want. And what they chose to do was go back to the thing that they did before Trump was president again and do his whole, freezing time thing where people are going to stand behind him. So we saw that in season 48, episode 17, where that was an Easter one. We saw it during the Republican, while people were campaigning to be the nominee in season 49, episode 4. And then we saw it very briefly during that Rami Youssef episode as well. So it's been a few times that we've seen this over the last couple of years that Trump's going to come out there and do this to the rest of the cast, but this time we go back to the founding fathers and Lin-Manuel Miranda playing Alexander Hamilton here, who we get a lot of funny bits between James as Trump and Lin-Manuel Miranda as Hamilton. So Halle, did you like the way that SNL kicked off this new administration for Trump in what they did in the cold open?
I really did. I went into it with like a lot of anticipation, big topics to cover. How are they going to do it? And I kind of figured it would be one of the typical Trump rambling. That's kind of a pretty common thing we see nowadays. But I was pleasantly surprised by the Lin-Manuel Miranda cameo. I know that's a hot topic, like random celebrity cameos and cold opens. This one seemed to fit in perfectly. It was topical. It was funny. I thought that the writing for this week's Trump rambling bit was so funny down to every single word. My roommate and I were sat on my couch, like audibly laughing, face in hands at the smallest of lines. Just the Trump talking about Elon and just saying that I think he did it a little bit. That was so simple and it landed so well for me. Every detail about this, down to him taunting Lynn being there in the first place, it set the episode in a really positive direction for me, which I haven't felt about a political cold open in quite a while. I feel like I thought I was getting fatigued with them, and now I think maybe everything is just so ridiculous all around that I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's just lean into it. Why not? We have to at this point. So I really love this cold open, and I'm really curious to see if that's the consensus here.
So yeah, I definitely did enjoy this one, despite the fact that we've seen the concept before, but I thought that something really clicked for me with this one versus the others that we've seen when he wasn't president again, in that it's very interesting to see James play Trump this way while he's president, because he's playing him in a very triumphant way that is like, I'm right, you're wrong. Whether you believe that in your, real life is your choice, but he's playing him in a way that basically the POV is like, and you think it's so ridiculous because of the things he's saying, but he's like, everyone around me sucks and I'm the greatest thing in the world. Whereas when Baldwin was playing him while Trump was president from 2017 through 2020, he was playing it like saying ridiculous things and everyone around him was judging him for the things he was saying. So it's almost like those sketches, you're like looking down on Baldwin's Trump, but in this way, Trump is looking down on everybody, if you can see what I'm saying. So Sammy, I thought there was an interesting contrast there now that he's president and I could actually see that. How do you feel about this cold open?
Yeah, that's an interesting take on the comparisons between those two. I definitely like this. Was surprised to see, the Alexander Hamilton cameo from Lin-Manuel Miranda. I'm a fan. I like to see him. I was getting kind of sick of the game they used to do more with Trump, where he really just kind of rambles from sort of pop culture topic to topic, and it's really sort of spelling out what he's doing. And there's a little bit of that in this format, but for whatever reason, I think it works a lot better for me. Maybe it's because it's sort of playing with the reality of the sketch where he is stopping time and he's taking center stage. And, when you have an impression like this on the cast, I just think you got to use him. And I was never of the camp. I'm sick of, the Trump as a figure in our lives, but that is just the reality of the situation. So I'm just very grateful that we have somebody like James Austin Johnson on the cast who can just come out and do this every week if he needs to. There's so many times throughout the show's history where you're getting these political sketches and they just don't have the right cast member to play the role. And fortunately we do right now. You go back to the 80s and there's just so many, Dana Carvey as Bush to camera sketches like over week after week after week, but the impression's so good that, you feel like you've seen it before, but they kind of find new jokes around it. So that's how I'm feeling with James Austin Johnson's character. So I'm for me, as long as you have someone like him on the cast that's able to do it, definitely go ahead and do it. I guess my one sort of gripe with this was, having Lin in the sketch, he's almost like a representative of sort of the pre-2016 era of sort of pop culture. So, he kind of goes at Lin a little bit to try to make him break, but felt like there was some opportunity there to sort of comment on, almost like the before times with Hamilton as that figure who's kind of like, not welcome as much anymore as he was 8 years ago. So that's the one sort of gripe with it there. But for me, the jokes and the performance were top notch for me.
Great point. From a meta perspective, I really encourage you, if you don't remember, go back and watch Lin-Manuel Miranda's monologue from when he hosted in 2016. And watch that and then watch this cold open, because it is a fascinating point in time where I mentioned this on Saturday, he does a rap from Hamilton. He does, it's This Is My Shot. And he walks around as this one time where he gets to finally host SNL and it's his dream. And he's going by and he walks by all the pictures on the wall and he points to Donald Trump's picture who had hosted in 2015. And he stops and he says, "Never gonna be president." And it's a huge moment. Everybody's cheering, going crazy right before. And it does not age well. And it's one of those things that I think a lot of people look back on and they're like, just, face palm because they can't believe that actually happened the way that it did. And I have to think somewhere either with Lauren or a producer or Lynn thought about that and thought about how well some of these lines will play now in retrospect with having Trump berate him with the
"Look at Lynn. He got tricked into coming here and now he's frozen on stage."
and this.
"Oh, look at Lynn. Look how bad he wants to do a rap."
Just so good. And this was probably my favorite one.
"He's in sniffing distance of an EGOT and he's got to stand there till I'm done."
So, Morgan, what did you think of this cold open and from what we saw of it?
I did not know what to expect coming right out of this inauguration and everything going on with Trump now being president and kind of how they were going to show this right after. And I'm happy that they didn't do like one of their typical like news desk situations. I liked how it was set with these founding fathers, and then with Lin popping out was definitely very unexpected. And I liked seeing him because I do love lin-manuel. I would have liked a little more from Lin. Like maybe he could have like unfroze a little bit, or like made little like comments just to like kind of play off of Trump and everything that was happening. But I say this all the time. I love JJ's impression of Trump. I just think that he does such a good job with it, down to the hands, down to the voice, all the mannerisms. So I like seeing JJ do this, and it makes me like proud of him and happy for him that he has this moment and he has such a strong impression of Trump. But yeah, I would have loved to see more Lin and Trump kind of banter going back and forth. I know we had a couple comments there, but I think that there could have been a little more. And also, like, there was a lot going on in the background, but they weren't really doing much. Like, I would have also liked some comments from a lot of the cast members were in this, and they were just frozen the whole time. So it would have been fun to have some more banter going on between them. But I did like the little notes about the inauguration, the call out about Melania and Elon. There was some good writing in there, which I appreciated. And it wasn't just like a random tangent that Trump usually does. Although when the writing is really strong, I do enjoy those long tangents just to see how they connect the dots between each little sentence and word and moment. But I thought it was a good cold open to kick off this new Trump presidency.
If I look at the macro of this cold open and how it's going to be remembered, I think that, put together by the head writers of, for this episode, I think that what was decided here was a little bit of a crutch. We know this worked before. We like this. Let's bring this back for now. And because there's no new episode of SNL until March 1st, we don't have to figure out the long-term plan of what we're going to do with this Trump impression for the next few years right now. So that's how I'm always going to see this, as sort of like a pushing the can down the road. But it will be very interesting to see where they take this and what tone they decide to build the sketches around the next few years. I spoke to James last June before, right after the season, and he said that the reason that his Trump hasn't really been in too many scenes is because they wanted to differentiate the James Austin Johnson Trump from the Alec Baldwin Trump. And, to Sammy's point about going back to like George H.W. Bush in the 80s, even Barack Obama impressions, those are a lot of Jim Downey written pieces where a lot of it had to do with the politics of the week, and they don't necessarily have those writers on staff. So I genuinely have no idea what they plan to do with the impression, knowing that they actually probably can't go back to the Trump freezing everybody because it's going to get old at a certain point. So I'm fascinated to see where they take this in March for these final 8 episodes of the season and then into next year. Let's talk about some of the sketches from the episode and get into what we saw from Timothée Chalamet. So let's start with Sammy on this one. Sammy, what do you want to go with first?
Yes, I want to start with the Medcast pre-tape, something that doesn't have Chalamet in the sketch, unfortunately, but I just thought this was such a great concept. There's so many little moments in here that really stood out to me. I like the bit with Emil where he's talking about, they're asking if he likes to party, and that's their way of asking like how many drinks he has in a week. That is something super relatable to me, because like in the past when I've been to the doctor, when they ask you that question, you feel judged. No matter what you say, you feel judged on what your answer is. So I found that to be so funny. And the reveal with JJ doing the cough test and his pants are down. Just a lot of little moments. I think they really, from just a writing perspective and just trying to find ways to really expand on this concept, I think they found just a lot of funny ways to milk this thing. There's just a lot of things you can sort of mine with podcasting culture And I think in the last couple of years, we've been starting to see more sketches on that. Obviously, we had the sketch earlier in the season, sort of spoofing sort of like the Joe Rogan style podcast or whatever. But I just think there's a ton that you can continue to mine with this, and I think they nailed it for me. This is one of my favorite pre-tapes of the season, I would say. Just a great Dismukes piece, and yeah, I would love to see just more podcast stuff, because there's just a ton there with how people are on podcasts that you can mine comedy out of.
Yeah, I absolutely love this. For me, I also found it very relatable. I had like the weird experience, and I'm the only Canadian on this panel, but basically up here with our healthcare, it's hard to find doctors, because it's just the way that the system works. So when you are like a kid and you grow up with your like pediatrician, you get used to knowing them, and they're like part of your life. And then like eventually you get too old and you have to find like an adult doctor. But as like I just like I was like always feeling like, oh, I wanted a doctor that I could like connect with more. So I always found it like very awkward and weird to go to the doctor and they're like asking a million questions about like how much you're drinking, like are you sexually active, like ask all these things. And I was like I just like don't want to talk to you about it. So the idea that we could take the podcast format and then force men to open up about their health is a brilliant concept. And I thought I was like, again, like those are some of the best moments when you're watching the show and you start thinking to yourself, like, how have they never done this before? So I loved so many aspects of this. Morgan, how did you feel about Medcast?
That's a very interesting like point of view. And I feel like, I don't know, like for women, and maybe it is just more like chill and normal, just like go to your doctor, your like female doctor. But like for men, I guess it is like, I don't know. Yeah, you're a child and then you're just like trying to find a new doctor like out of the blue and trying to like connect with them. And I guess maybe for men, they just get like intimidated by it. It seemed like that's what they were like hinting at. So the writing in this and like just the whole idea in general and just like how podcasts are just so like popular right now and like anything could be a podcast nowadays. So combining that like medical aspect with the podcast, I just thought was really creative. And when they were like trying to like distract the men and like when they were like asking them certain questions and trying to like play it off cool and like not trying to like intimidate them too much. Cause like, I mean, going to the doctor isn't always like a positive experience. So just having them like try to make it this like positive, chill, vibey experience, I just thought was like such a great idea and great writing. And at first when I saw like the intro of the pre-tape with like Heidi talking, I was like, oh, like what is this going to be? Like, this isn't like, I don't know if this is going to hit. And then it just totally turned into something so different. And I'm definitely curious why Timothee wasn't featured.
I would assume that because he was doing musical performances, he didn't want to take the time to also film pre-tapes. So that was probably why. If he was just hosting, I think he would for sure be in it. But yeah, this probably is like, we're generalizing, but probably men are less trusting of doctors than women. And we're not talking about like going to the hospital. We're talking about just like, I guess, your regular checkups here. But yeah, totally agree. I mean, there was this line here, where Andrew said this.
Get out the bicep measuring machine!
And I was like, it just reminded me so much of when my doctor was like, oh, like, so do you like go to the gym? And then he starts like using the machine on me. And I was like, and I just like had this flashback. I was like, oh, was he trying to like get me to open up by asking me these questions? So I like feel like this definitely has to come from, I saw Martin Herlihy and Streeter put this together. It definitely has to come from like one of their experiences. Halle, what did you think of Medcast?
I was pleasantly surprised by it. I will say, going into the sketch, as they were setting it up, I was a little bit skeptical just because, like, podcast culture and the role of podcasts in today's society is such a topic of conversation everywhere. And the, like, kind of bro-y podcast joke, I feel like is so, like, not necessarily on SNL, just in the world overdone. Like, I kind of am at a point in society, like, I don't want to see more jokes or hear more about these, like, super masculine bro-y podcasts, but I thought this was a really funny spin on it, and it was written so well. Like, they gave Dismukes such funny bits like that were so simple, like him asking a question and being like, oh yeah, turning around to subtly write stuff down. It was the little things like that and the little details like that that really won me over with this sketch. I feel like I tend to not be the biggest fan of super like bro heavy sketches, which may not be a surprise given everything about me. But this one won me over. It felt relatable in some ways. I feel like everyone has had random conversations with friends about anything where they're like, oh, we should totally turn this into a podcast. It's like not everything ever needs to be a podcast, but what if it was? What if your doctor's appointment became a podcast? So it kind of brought me back to
Call
those
this broy,
conversations.
Hallie. Is it like what's the
Really?
definition of like broy? Is it broy?
I would define it as broy. I don't know
It
what
was
Sammy
just-
and Morgan think.
It was male centric.
Yeah.
Well, I almost thought that this was just a continuation of the was it the Bang
Banger
podcast?
Bros, I
Was
think.
Banger Bros podcast. I almost thought this was a continuation of that. And I think that was from just a casting perspective, just having Marcelo and Dismukes in it again. Was Ashley in that first sketch as well? Or who played like the...
No, that was it wasn't actually. It was Emil who was with Andrew and Marcelo.
Didn't they have a woman?
Oh, Charlie XCX.
Oh yeah, the host. Yes. Yeah. So I almost at first thought this was a continuation of that, but yeah, no, I definitely got the broy vibes from this as well, and I think they were, because it was specifically targeting men going to the doctor. I think that's kind of sort of the way they went about it.
Yeah, because to me, it's like if I sort of see that, but I think if they were like going for full broy, it would be like, oh, let's get guys to like open up like while they're playing beer pong, that type of thing, as opposed to just like simply asking them questions. I guess because then if that's the case, Hallie, are all men who do podcast bros?
I don't think all men who do podcasts are bros, but there's definitely a certain like speech pattern and tone of voice that broy podcasts take on, and they definitely had that in the sketch. It did take the kind of broy podcast vibe in that sketch. Although I don't know that there's strict criteria for broy or not broy. But to me, that's the best word that I could use to describe it.
Yeah, the chat. I love all the, I love all the comments. So keep letting us know. This was my favorite line from the sketch.
That's crazy. Go ahead and cough for me.
Just Andrew was so good in this. But
Really
yeah,
good.
I mean, it was kind of weird. It was weird that we had that other podcast sketch from the Charlie episode, and then you have Marcelo and Andrew as two of the main guys, and they're sort of seated in the same direction. So instantly your mind goes to that this is going to be like the Banger Boys or whatever that was. But it's not. So, again, it's probably tough for them because that was supposed to be like a little bit of like right centric, whereas this isn't like a political thing. But for me, I thought that this worked on all levels. It was a really solid commercial. And I want to shout out Heidi because I felt like Heidi really wrapped around this sketch very good, because it wasn't just a commercial for Medcast product, but it was the Medcast product, of a bigger company. So it was basically like this really corporate environment that puts together health insurance products, decided that now they're going to find a new way to sell this to bros or to guys. So because of that, I thought that this was really well done, where you get Heidi, who's dressed extremely corporate and delivering things just very like
Medcast, the doctor's appointment that feels like a podcast.
So it was really well packaged, and I thought that the tone of the whole thing was really brilliant. So I love this sketch. Hallie, I'm going to head over to you for the sketch that you want us to talk about.
Ooh, I'm so excited. So I want to talk about a sketch that had both me and my roommate like doubled over laughing. One of my favorites, if not my favorite sketch of the season, and that is New Barista Training. This sketch was everything to me. I thought this was one of those sketches that like really skyrocketed Timothee to like elite host status to me, because it's such a simple thing. Like the little voice he did, the way he spoke, the little dance he did, were so stupid, and the combination of those things somehow was one of the hardest I've ever laughed in at least the last couple of years. I thought that even though kind of the main central joke kind of mostly kept repeating and building a little bit, ending with him finally incorporating the latte in there, it just felt so perfect for Timothee as like an actor, and with his sense of humor based on everything we've seen of him over the years, it was like I don't think it would have landed the same with any other host, but it was perfect for Timothee, executed perfectly. I will never eat at a Cheesecake Factory the same again. And anytime I hear music ever again in my life, I will do that stupid little dance that he did. That was everything to me. This was the episode highlight for me for sure. And I haven't got anyone else's opinion on that so far. So I'm curious to see how it landed with everyone else. But I have no notes for this sketch.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think some of the writing definitely could have been cleaned up a bit, and maybe we'll get into some of the minutia of that. But this is a sketch that was clearly elevated and carried by Timothée Chalamet, and it reminded me, and I mean this is the biggest compliment. It reminded me of some of the things that Justin Timberlake could do with some sketches, where he could just, he has this, sparkly personality that you can feel his energy radiate through the screen, and he elevates everything that's happening around him. And for me, like, if this sketch was given to a host that isn't as talented, I think it dies. But Timothee just carries this over on energy. So Morgan, how did you feel about new barista training?
When the first part started, I thought that it was going to go into the direction of some of my favorite ones, like the Barnes & Noble, like employee check, and the Best Buy employees. Do you guys know those that I'm talking about? Those are my favorite ones.
Like,
I think they're
with
so
Cecily
funny.
and Bobby?
Yes. I thought it was going to go into that direction because I just thought that like Mikey would kind of do a good job like leading that. And it was kind of being directed towards the employees. So I was hoping for like something like that. And then obviously, I mean, it kind of was like that when they were going back and forth with the certain employees. And obviously the employees all had their own kind of like personalities and characteristics to them, which I thought was nice. And I thought that the Cassie part was honestly like so funny because like her chalkboard puns were decent and then they just kept shitting on her. And then obviously Timothee did have some great lines in there. I did think it dragged out a little long to my liking. And it kind of started getting like a little wild at the end when they were bringing out like different cast members, like Keenan made a little appearance. But the dance break was everything. Halle, I do agree with that one. There was good parts. There was not my favorite parts. I think this was definitely one of the sketches that was like in the middle for me.
Yeah, you know what I think, in terms of sketch writing, you pointed out Ashley Padilla's character who kept saying things that were really bad, and then she would get berated by Mikey and Heidi. And I felt like that was such a clean opposite from what we were getting from Timothee, who was coming up with these like wild things that he was doing, but they ended up being really liked. So much so at the end of the sketch, they're going to hand over the entire cafe to him. And I think what halted the momentum here, and I hate to say it because I was really happy with what he did on the show last week, but I think that the Devin Walker pieces in this sketch were really unnecessary to the writing, where you have somebody else coming up with a good pun for the board outside completely unnecessarily. We don't need to go, okay, Devin, or his character was Tom. Okay, Tom, give us a thing. And then he's like, oh, okay, that's good. All right, Cassie, yours is so bad. Okay, Timothee, you're going to have this big energetic thing. That to me felt a little bit forceful, because if you just keep going as Cassie's the one that's really bad at this, and Timothee somehow through his insane stand-up comedy and dancing and all of this ends up being really good, that he wins everybody over.
Man, just the other day, my lady said, Big Betty, how much weight you think I gained? Girl, a latte.
See, I think this sketch plays really well because it's super clean. When you try and force too many people in there and too many turns, I think it loses the magic of what they're trying to do. Sammy, how did you feel about new barista training?
Yeah, that's interesting. All these things you're bringing up about sort of the structure of the sketch, because kind of right off the bat, the Jane Wickline appearance. Again, I'm very pro Jane Wickline. I found that to be a very bizarre way to start this sketch off. These are things that I feel like on the rewatch, actually, that sort of portion played out, a lot better for me. But kind of on during the live, my live watch of it, kind of threw me off from the jump. And then we get into the real meat of the sketch with the Timmy character. Yeah, I did really like his performance. To me, from a performance standpoint, the musical guest appearance notwithstanding, I think this was like his highlight of the show for me. When you don't get, like a rap roundtable make the show, we get something like this. I think this, like that not being in this episode, opened up the room for this type of character and this type of sketch to be in this episode. So I'm thankful for that. And yeah, I guess for me, again, from the writing perspective, bringing Keenan in, I liked how it really did become sort of like they were at a stand-up show and he's bringing on the next comic, and then it goes on probably like 30 to 45 seconds too much longer with bringing Keenan in there. But yeah, I mean, overall, again, from a performance standpoint, if we're going through our sort of check boxes of like, could so-and-so be a cast member on the show, when we're thinking of great hosts, I think you put this on Timmy's reel as like, yeah, in another life, if he's able to do performances like this, I think he has that sketch comedy chops. So yeah, I like that we saw this. I actually wouldn't mind seeing this again if they sort of change up the format a little bit and seeing this character again. But yeah, overall, this was a win for me.
The Jane Wickline portion was really interesting because they put Jane in the role of somebody who's on the cast with a really unique voice, and they're going to give you one line that's going to kill, and then you're going to pull them out of the sketch because there's no point in having them any further. So I think of like a Leslie Jones, for example, who had a really unique voice and brought a lot of energy to a sketch that can come in and just kill with one line, and then you take her out of it. Jane Wickline is very, very understated. We've, described her as green on the show, where she's starting to like figure out what it is that she brings to sketches. And we haven't seen her flourish. And you might run hot or cold on this unless you've been on Update and you like the songs that she's bringing over from TikTok. So for me, Halle, I thought it was fascinating that they made the choice to bring in Jane to deliver one line and then, okay, but you're wrong, and then she leaves. So how do you feel like they used her here, given what we've seen from her this season?
I feel like it was a case of kind of like you said, still trying to figure out exactly like where she thrives, where she flourishes on the show. And it's like starting to figure that out, but not fully committing to it yet. Like you said, the kind of like she'll reel it in, she'll kick us off, and then that's out of the sketch. I saw someone in the chat say it. Sorry if you can hear my cat crashing into things back there. But I had the same experience where I got so caught up in the later parts of the sketch that I forgot until I rewatched that Jane was even in it. And then when I had that second rewatch, I was like, how did I not remember that? Like, that was a pretty good Jane moment, in my opinion. But I just wish they would like commit to her in sketches a little bit more. Because when they do this thing that they've been doing a lot of like, all right, here's a little bit and now you're done. I like what I hear and what I see, and I find it funny. So that is a really interesting point. I totally lied when I said I had no notes about the sketch about 5 minutes ago. I have a few now.
Yeah, but that's why we talk it through. So
yeah, the second
so
we
it's
started
good.
talking, I was like, wait, I lied real bad. But yeah, that's a really interesting note about the sketch. I was caught up in the whimsy of Timothee when I was yapping a little bit ago. But Jane's
That's
appearance is
okay.
an interesting, interesting point to talk about.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's really interesting in comparison to some of the other cast members that we've seen this season. And now we're at the point where we're 12 episodes in. We're 60% of the way through the season. And one of the themes that we're going to be talking about in May will absolutely be the neutering of some of the personalities of our cast in order to integrate them more into the show. So someone like Sarah Sherman, who has this huge, unique voice, has been all over Saturday Night Live in season 50. But except for maybe a brief moment in the end of this show, we don't really get to see her personality thrive this season. So when you get these sketches and you have a moment where someone's going to come in for a quick one line, it shows you a little bit what the writers and producers are thinking about who they're trying to make those unique personalities on the show. And clearly, this is an example that they feel like Jane has a unique voice, but I just don't know that she's fully cracked what that voice is yet. So I think that this is a story that is yet to be completed, but something that we should keep an eye on. All right, let's keep going. Let's talk, Morgan, about the sketch that you want us to dive into.
All right, we're covering the dog run sketch. I don't know, does anyone here have a dog?
I had a dog for a very long time, so I definitely can relate to this.
Okay, so I have a 3-year-old Pomeranian, and we've lived in 3 different apartment buildings, which means 3 different dog run experiences. And as you know, there's kind of like the same group of dogs and owners that kind of come to the dog run. You kind of all become friends throughout the months of knowing each other, or a year, or however long you live in that area. I mean, I know it's different for like homeowners and condo owners or whatever it may be, but specifically for apartments, the dog run is like the main kind of place where you're bringing your dog to socialize and like do its thing. So over the years, I've seen a lot of different dogs' personalities and situations, and they nailed it. I thought the writing was awesome. I love how they had all the different dog breeds coming out. They all had their own little personalities. I loved the banter between the different dogs and castmates going on. They all kind of had their own moments. I was laughing so hard. I rewatched it multiple times because it was just like so relatable and funny. There were some good lines and moments that I really enjoyed that I wrote down. Obviously, we had to mention the butt scoop part and the Keenan part when he kept eating the grass and then throwing it up, and then eating the grass and then throwing it up. They really nailed like the dog's mental and mind and like way of thinking, which I just thought was awesome. Obviously the licking part when they were like licking each other. And then my favorite part, obviously, was when Dismukes played Taco the Pom, and he made a huge announcement that he jumped up on the bench with no owner's assistance, because that's what my dog does all the time. But I just thought that this was just like such a funny, unique idea and really had me laughing. And I would love to hear everyone's thoughts about this.
Yeah, it was funny, it was unique, and it was uniquely formatted for this era, which I loved it, and contributed to the, fresh feelings that we were getting with some of the sketch ideas and Timothee doing music that night. I thought it was so great that we're going to, off the top, introduce, now if a bunch of dumb little dogs talked and acted like people, and you have all the cast members playing dogs. And, again, if you are a dog lover, you could certainly, and, bring your dog to the dog run, you could certainly relate to a lot of things here. I thought it was fun and creative. I cannot believe that Deadline, and I didn't want to put anything about this on social media to give it any more attention, but I will here, because I can't believe that one of the writers of Deadline posted an article that said, "Is Dog Run the worst Saturday Night Live skit in years?" as Timothée Chalamet and cast play crude pooches on the loose. So first of all, you lost all of us at skit, but beyond that, that is the biggest piece of dog crap I've ever seen, because I cannot believe that this is the sketch that a hit piece was written on, when we are trying to encourage, as fans of the show, for them to get creative and try things. If it doesn't work for you, that's fine. But this was bizarre to me, beyond that in all my time podcasting, that an article was actually written about this sketch saying how bad it was. This is not the worst sketch ever, and this, if anything, is up for one of the better sketches of this episode. And to me, there was so many good things I liked about it. So the reason I am pointing it out is because I never know what truly gets back to the show when we're talking about this, and I want them to know that I do not endorse that piece at all. Halle, what did you think of the dog run sketch?
I loved this sketch. I am not a person who thinks that I am above like dumb humor. I think that something as simple as like a bunch of dumb little dogs running around and talking to each other is not something that I'm above. It is hilarious to me. I don't have a dog, but I've been around plenty of dogs my whole life. I'm not a huge dog person, which part of the reason I don't love dogs is because I don't like it when they start humping everything. So that was a really triumphant moment for me to be like, yes, it's addressed. Thank you, SNL. But I agree with you, John, that
They have animal instincts, Halle.
they do it so vigorously. I hate it. I do have to applaud Mikey and Marcello for how much they really went for it in the sketch. That caught me off guard, I will say. But I'm with you, John. This was one of my probably favorite sketches of the night. I was so shocked when I check Deadline like every 2 seconds in my day. I like to keep up with the entertainment news. I was shocked. My boss asked me about it even. I said, well, people who care about the show wouldn't have even clicked on the article on account of the word skit. But I couldn't figure out what would have possibly made it such an unpopular thing. I guess it's not really an unpopular thing. Maybe it's unpopular with one person, a writer at Deadline. But this one was so like funny to me in not like a way that felt super like innovative or necessarily unexpected, but just in like, oh yeah, that is how dogs are, and presenting it this way is funny. But it was just dumb and funny, and I really loved it. And I can't quite figure out what about it could be construed as like terrible. I feel like anyone who thinks that that was the worst sketch ever has probably not watched more than like 2 episodes of SNL Max.
Well, I think that part of it comes from the fact that this sketch was packaged so differently than a lot of sketches are now. Now you usually open up on a scene where things are happening, and we don't have, in the last 10 years, with Don Pardo, the original announcer of the show, not really being around anymore, they don't do a lot of sketches like this. And I think a big reason why they used to was because Don Pardo had this like amazing voice and would often, going back even to like the 70s, would present sketches and say like, and now here's so and so doing something. Or even like going up into the mid 2000s, I brought up on Saturday the Andy Samberg, and now an out of breath jogger from 1992. These were things that I think are really great. Sometimes they're like trunk pieces that people bring out from their past. But for me, the packaging of it, I think, is probably jarring for people who watch the show every week and don't see anything like it. And I think that this sketch works way worse if they do it as a scene and don't let us know what's happening up front, because now we can enjoy it. It's like, okay, we've established what we're about to see, and now they're not telestrating the jokes in the way that they would with like the parade sketch with Bowen and Ego and saying like, and now we're seeing a dog come in and the dog's going to do this, but we get excitement for what's going to happen next. So Sammy, what did you think of the sketch?
Well, first off, yeah, I'm with this entire crew on that Deadline article. Mike Fleming, we got to get you on point counterpoint to debate this one out.
I wasn't going to say his name.
That's he's the editor of Deadlines. That's not like he's some guy. Yeah, I can see maybe you see the cast in these absurd costumes and you automatically don't buy into the sketch. Like I can see that maybe being a turnoff for people, how maybe uncanny or weird it looks, almost similar to like, the Cats, the Cats musical movie from like a couple of years ago, how, sometimes you just can't buy into a certain look of something. But to me, I bought in, totally with you, John, on like the way this is packaged. This felt fresh because it really did feel like a throwback, like you said, to this type of thing. And the way it was presented, they used to do on the show a lot more, and I like that they did it. I liked how they really created like a world in this dog park. Like the dog park felt like anybody could another type of dog could pop up at any moment. Like when they zoomed out, when the sketch was over, to me, I was honestly shocked how small of a set it was, because I really do feel like they built out a great world in the sketch. And for me, what I really liked about it is this is the way to do sort of a parade style sketch. You're not teeing off. You're not telling the audience, oh, this is the dog that has the zoomies, and then you bring the dog that has the zoomies, and then they have the zoomies. Like you're letting us discover what everybody's bit is in real time, and then you're not showing your cards. You're not giving the joke away. So yeah, I totally applaud the show for doing this. Got a shout out to Smukes for his delivery with the attention small dogs. I mean, that was such a Will Forte moment for me, like for Dismukes. Like I really could see him doing that. But yeah, I can maybe see people just automatically being turned off by the costumes and everything, maybe it being too weird for them. But personally, I like this a lot.
Yeah, he sounded a lot like Charlie Day if you go back and you listen to him sitting up on the bench. But yes, the Forte vibes were definitely there. I thought he crushed it in that. I thought that some of the minutiae here were really good, including Mikey and Timothee, like when they were at the start of the sketch and they were talking about, what's been going on and where they peed recently. And they keep stopping to like look to the side and just like stare to the side as if a dog would do that. I knew right away we were in for something good because it was really well written. But I wasn't prepared for what we saw from Kenan Thompson, who is, been slightly on the decline this season for as much as we've seen him, and didn't have a huge night. But this moment in the night where he comes up, and Morgan mentioned it, where he starts eating some grass. So he goes,
Where'd this come from? Might be food. Better eat it.
So he puts it in his mouth. He starts chewing it live. Then he spits it back into his hand and goes,
Nah, I don't like that. Where'd this come from? Might be food. Better eat it. Yeah, I don't like that.
Does it again. So at this point, you could start to see like the chewed, I don't know what he was eating because I don't think it was actually grass, but whatever it was, chewed up going into his hand, and then does it again.
Where'd this come from? Might be food. Better eat it. Yeah, I don't like that.
And to me, it's like it does throw back to some of the days where SNL would do stuff like this. And I know it's not like the baby bird sketch where someone's chewing and spitting in someone else's mouth. But the idea of just the whole thing that this was done live was like super gross. But dogs do this. And I thought that this was really, really funny to me and a great Kenan moment. Like the fact that in season 22, we're still getting great Kenan moments to me is why it's worth still having him on the show. So I thought that was really fun. All right, the sketch I want to get into is I couldn't leave this episode without talking about Oedipal or Oedipal arrangements, where it opens up and looks like, because there's no episode before Valentine's Day, this is going to be our Valentine's Day sketch where we get a couple played by Michael Longfellow and Chloe Fineman. And, instead of him getting a gift for her, he gets a gift for mom, played by Heidi Gardner, dad, played by Mikey Day, in a role that you would absolutely expect Mikey to be in forever. For the rest of SNL time, Mikey Day will be known for these cucked roles. And he gets completely destroyed by his son, who steals away his wife and the mom here as they start getting more and more romantic with each other based on Oedipus and that whole very famous complex where we do get this.
How about Taboo?
I feel like we're playing already.
And the idea that the son wants to kill his father and then be with his mom. And I thought that this was going to be a very fun, playful idea, even though the concept was kind of weird. But then it got very dark to the point where we're actually seeing Longfellow kill Mikey and like cut off his limbs and put them in the fire. And to me, this was like Michael O'Donoghue-esque. Like, this is something that you would have seen back in the original days of the show, where they got like really dangerous with stuff and pushed the boundaries, and it was packaged in a way that was more like lovey-dovey, you know, You Can Love Your Mom from SNL, but within the package itself was this really dark, twisted humor that I absolutely loved. So Sammy, your thoughts on it?
This is why you have somebody like Michael Longfellow on the cast. You're going back to talking about how certain people's, you know, brand of humor is maybe being neutered. That, you know, now that, you know, they've been on the cast for a while and we're trying to find ways to make them fit in the SNL mold. Like, I really don't think you can do this sketch with any of the other current cast members in that particular role, and it will like kill as much as Longfellow does in this sketch. I really enjoyed this. Such a, again, weird concept. I didn't even make that connection, John, that this will really just be like our only Valentine's Day sketch for the whole season. So I think that is really funny to consider. Will we ever see this in the next primetime Valentine's Day special? I'm not too sure about that, but yeah, no, I really like this. Short, sweet, to the point. Just took a concept and ran with it. Obviously, we've seen Mikey in this type of role. He can do it in his sleep. It still works for me. And I do want to shout out Heidi as well. The way she says, like, you know, do you want to play Taboo? Like, they really sell the like that there is like this weird relationship there. And I feel like, you know, you could play it a certain way where you're not getting that sense of sort of darkness and weirdness in it. So yeah, I think all around this was really well done.
Sammy, did you send this to your mom?
No.
Okay, because I did, and because on Saturday I was like, "Is it weird that I want to send this to my mom?" But she thought that this was so funny. She's like, "Oh, this is really great." So for me, like, win across the board. But not that it was relatable in any way whatsoever, but it was just a very funny concept. Morgan, what did you think of this sketch?
No, I thought that it was a good opening, and then it started just getting weirder and weirder and weirder, and it was like a little uncomfortable, but I agree that Michael definitely was such a good part in this. And I mean, we see Heidi and Mikey in these parental roles, I feel like, all the time. Yeah, now I'm realizing that was the Valentine's Day little hint there, but I wish we had maybe more Valentine's Day in there. But yeah, no, I thought that, yeah, it just kept getting weirder and weirder. It wasn't my favorite of the night, if I'm going to be honest. But yeah, no, I thought that Michael definitely, like, he was the MVP of this sketch for sure.
Yeah, I think that they've gone to the well of like these bloody surprise sketches like so many times. And this was a really fresh, creative way of doing something kind of gross, where you see, like, even though a lot of the focus of the sketch, Halle, is on the relationship, I think it is really important to see the dream sequence of him killing his dad in there. And I think that really elevates the sketch for me. How did you feel about it?
I felt like this sketch was a really nice, like, contrast to most of the rest of the episode for me. In my opinion, pretty much the entire rest of the episode was like very silly, goofy, high energy, like everyone's laughing and having a good time. And this was such a sharp turn from that. It went from like giggly haha funny to sitting in uncomfortable silence funny. I don't think I made a single sound during this entire sketch. But that didn't mean it wasn't funny. It was just a completely different type of funny than the rest of the episode. And I thought it was a perfect execution of that kind of uncomfortable humor where it's like, oh, ew, but it's still funny. And I agree that not just making it creepy in the like mom and son weird relationship way, but in the actual like step further murdering your dad way, elevated that like uncomfortable element of it. I also thought this was a really funny sketch right now because like boy moms are such a big topic on the internet right now. I feel like the kind of like overbearing, overly attached overly affectionate boy moms. I see so much about that. So this felt like a really good exaggeration and spin on that topic of conversation. Maybe I'm just on like boy mom TikTok, but I see so much about it. So this felt like a really good play into like a modern topic of conversation that's coming up a lot.
This is one of the great things of why TikTok should still be around, is because otherwise, you wouldn't get boy mom TikTok. But I didn't even know that existed. But that is very funny. I am glad that they went to this well here, because again, it is different, like you said, from anything else in the episode. And Saturday Night Live at its core is supposed to surprise you. It's supposed to make you feel uncomfortable at times. There's sketches in every era that like get dark and creepy. And I think that's one of those things that's like why we all root for Michael Longfellow, because he has this bit of, he's a little bit sinister. And you saw that when he replaced Bill Hader as the game show host for What's That Name? And he had one last year as well where he was a game show host. And, for me, it's like, has he perfectly fit into every sketch that he's been in? Probably not, but he also has a very unique voice for the show. And I think that going from being on Weekend Update last week to this sketch this week could be a major career turning point if he goes on to be on the show for, 6, 7, 8 years and ends up having this amazing career where we're talking about great Michael Longfellow sketches, or maybe even Weekend Update. I think that this, point in his first year as a repertory player, where we head into the second half of the year and he's already had 2 major moments, could be, the turning point for him. So let's keep an eye out for that the rest of the season. Okay, we're going to go around the round table and we're going to do some rapid fire. So I'm going to ask each of you to tell me anything else from the episode that you want to bring up that you thought was interesting. So Halle, I'll start with you.
I thought it was really interesting that I actually cannot remember, even though it was like half an hour ago, if we talked about this, that we got 2 podcast sketches in one episode. I don't know if there were just a lot of podcasts that everyone's listening to them in the writer's room right now or what. But I was watching and I was like, wow, I can't wait to be on the podcast this week, because a lot of podcast references. And it felt interesting to have 2 like topically similar things in one episode. I thought going into the second podcast sketch there that I was going to not like it on account of the one that had just happened. Sorry, my cat's literally destroying my nightstand. Sending her to the dog run. She'll enjoy it there. But I felt that the 2 podcast sketches like almost complemented each other, like enough for me to be like, oh, hey, another podcast, but they were different enough in tone and in concept that I felt that it was an okay use of 2 topically similar sketches in close proximity to each other too.
I think we're going to get a lot more of them moving forward, because this is the medium that people are listening to now. Like, they would make fun of newspapers in the 80s, and they would, they make fun of other shows, talk shows, the fact that SNL doesn't even do commercials anymore, because for the most part, I mean, they did one in this episode with the Oedipus one, but they rarely do commercials because they know that people don't watch commercials anymore. So there's not like a universal, like, where's the beef to make fun of. In this case, people watch podcasts, and that's, where, presidential candidates ended up going to get votes because of that. So I think because that is what people care about, SNL is going to continue to go down that well. And I'm totally okay with it as long as you make them feel unique to each other. So, we've had 3 this season, and the Medcast one did look a lot very similar to the Banger Boys one, just in terms of, visually. But I did like that the AI software one at least had a different visual to it. Sammy, anything on your list for rapid fire that you want us to talk about?
Yeah, the bungee class, the workout class. I think I was more positive on that than maybe some of the other opinions I've seen online. As something that's like at the top of the show, you have this big set, this sort of ridiculous sort of concept. I think it's just, I don't know. To me, it was just more fun than funny to see the cast kind of strung up like that. So from that aspect, I wouldn't say like the best jokes per capita in the sketch, but I liked it. I guess the one real element for me that I felt was missing was it played kind of light on the physical comedy of it all. Like, obviously we just had Melissa McCarthy on the show last month, but just imagining somebody like that in this sort of setting, I think would have taken this up a gear for me personally. But overall, was fun.
Morgan, I know before the show you said you wanted to talk about this one as well. So what did you think of that?
This was like my second favorite. I just liked how it was like right after the monologue. We have this huge set. We have the castmates literally like in harnesses, in bungees. I personally love seeing the cast doing like crazy things like this. And it just makes it funny for me when they're having so much fun. They're breaking character. They're laughing. I did think that there was some good one-liners in there too, just with like Timothee being like this crazy instructor, very like eccentric. The whole like kind of parody part about like bringing your significant other to a workout. Also, just in the workout industry, there's just so many crazy workouts nowadays. It's like we were talking about for podcasts, like there's a podcast for everything. Like now there's a workout for everything and every kind of activity. So just like kind of shedding light on that, I thought was really, really creative. The part with the calorie counting, I thought was hilarious. And then obviously at the end, they were like minus over like thousands of calories just from having one bite of this cake, which that was also so unhinged when they were just like eating it, throwing it around, being funny. I just liked how this was kind of towards the beginning of it. And definitely, I thought it was like really funny. I was laughing.
Yeah, it wasn't my favorite of the night, but I totally get from like a visual perspective why it was interesting to look at. Halle, just your 2 cents on that one quickly.
I agree. It was probably my second favorite of the night. I thought just like the dedication to having them flying around in their little bungees made the sketch for me. This is another one that I apologize so much on behalf of my cat's behavior. She's crazy. But this is another sketch that I think
right now a Deadline article is being written. Worst podcast episode ever. The podcast about cats sucked.
They're gonna put a picture of my cat in there and be like the criminal over here. I apologize. She's crazy. This is another sketch that I don't know that it would have landed like it did without Timothée Chalamet. Like, I know there's other hosts out there that could commit to the bit like he did and could bring that energy, but it just felt so him in that wig. I keep seeing TikToks about it too. People being like, this is the best role for Timothee ever. Just have him do this every day of his life. He was born for this. This was one of those sketches that I think the host really, really elevates and brings to life, and it would look a lot different with anyone else.
Yeah, definitely. Let me head over very quickly while we do some rapid fire to one of the moments of the night that I thought was so good. And I want to just point out again, Andrew Dismukes, who had this piece on Weekend Update that was cut a couple times last year, but he brings it back where he comes out with a puppet, and the turn on the sketch, so fun.
I am so proud of you, son. You've accomplished so much, and I am so damn proud to be your father.
Again, like the tone shifts in this episode are absolutely fantastic, where we're getting like super creepy to like super wild physical stuff. Like if you really think about this episode and the way they put it together as a whole, the uniqueness in all of the sketches, I think the range here is probably larger than we've had, even though we did have a couple of podcast sketches. But Andrew Dismukes coming out here talking with his puppet and then getting super sappy to the point where the puppet turns to Andrew and says,
"Look at you, the 17th most famous current cast member on SNL."
Now, not to be mean here, but who is actually the 17th most famous current cast member on SNL? Because I don't think it's Andrew Dismukes.
It's not him.
Sammy, what do you think? Yeah, what do you think?
Oh, I have to say a name.
Yeah, on the spot.
Well, it's tough because you gotta think. Okay, obviously the featured players are newer, but Jane Wickline has like 100,000 plus TikTok followers or something like that. So I don't think it's like I think the 17th, it's not Jane Wickline. It might be, it honestly might be Devin Walker.
Okay. Interesting.
That's
Morgan,
my
who's the
pick.
17th most famous SNL cast member right now?
Is it, what's his, I mean, I don't even know him that much,
Oh, if
honestly.
you don't know his
He's-
name, then
he's
maybe it's
new.
him.
Amir?
Emil.
Emil? He's not my
Yeah.
favorite. I mean, I'm going to be honest. Also, Andrew Dismukes is like one of my top 3 favorites right now. Like, I love
Well, it's not
Andrew.
favorite, it's
He's my
famous. So I
favorite.
just want to make sure. Yeah.
Remind me, how many people are in the cast right now?
Yeah.
17.
Oh, okay. Then I don't think it's Devin. I think it's definitely Emil or Ashley.
Yeah,
For some
it's
reason, I
Emil.
was like, oh, there's 20, so it's got to be. I was doing math in my head. Yeah, it's probably Emil or Ashley. Sorry, love you both.
I think it's, yeah, okay, we're not talking about favorites here. We're just talking about most famous at this current moment on January 28th of 2025. Halle, is it Emil?
I would say Ashley. I kind of watched Emil have a big moment on social media after his Weekend Update appearance. I have seen like a TikTok edit of him, and I was like, okay, so he's not the least famous. I would say Ashley, but I definitely don't think that's any reflection of talent or like popularity on the show. I just think there hasn't been that kind of like big internet moment yet that gets kind of the general public like aware. I think that'll change for sure.
And we're all just like joking around here, but to me, this was just so amazing from Andrew Dismukes on there. And again, I love the meta turn and him talking just about him, and then Colin gets involved as well, where he turns to Colin and he says,
Look at you, the 16th most famous current cast member on SNL.
I think Colin's probably in the top 3 at this point, most famous cast members on SNL. Maybe 1. He might be 1 with him being married to Scarlett Johansson. Like, he could be the most famous cast member.
It's a nepotism. It's a wife nepotism thing for him.
Yes. But anyways, regardless, this was so great to me, so I had to point it out. Absolutely crushed it. Love the puppets. Yeah, just great stuff here. Okay, let's talk MVPs for the week. We'll wrap this whole thing up. So Timothée Chalamet put on a show. Obviously, you know, he performed a couple times as well. So it was a great night for him. 7 sketches, 2 performances. We had Lin-Manuel Miranda appear in a sketch. Adam Sandler was there to do an introduction. We got, I want to say, I can't wait to see what Mike's stats are tomorrow night when he's live for By the Numbers, because this was some stat padding going on from a lot of the cast members. Mikey Day, Heidi Gardner, both in 7 sketches this week. That's really big for this era when the average is like 3 or 4. So 7 from Mikey and Heidi. Chloe, 6 sketches. Keenan, the 5 sketches, and then he did that introduction for the second performance. Also 5 from Andrew, Sarah, and Michael Longfellow. 4 from Ego and James and Marcelo. 3 from Bowen, Devin, Oli in that one sketch that we saw. And then for the feature players, 5 sketches. Ashley Padilla also does that voiceover in the Oedipal arrangements. Emil in 3, Jane Wickline in 3 as well. We got appearance from Moss Perricone, one of the writers, in the monologue. So that was cool. But I'm going to go to each of you. I'm going to ask you who you think the top 3 vote getters were for week number 12 of season 50. Halle, I'll start with you.
Oh, goodness. Host and everything is included, right? Just triple confirming before I give my answer here. Okay, I'm gonna have to guess Timothée number 1. I think just as a host, he carries so much. He's got to be my number 1 guess. I'm gonna guess maybe Michael Longfellow in there. And then I'm gonna go with Heidi for my 3rd. They just felt like they had very strong appearances, especially Michael Longfellow, like we talked about in the like Oedipal arrangement sketch. He just was like so well fit for that role and did it so well. And he also was so funny in the bungee one. I think those have to be my 3 in order, and I'm locking it in.
Sammy, let's lock your picks in.
Yeah, number 1, definitely Timothée Chalamet. We haven't talked about the music performances enough. I thought he killed it. So got to put him number 1 for that. Number 2, I'm going with Dismukes here. I think that Weekend Update piece was really strong, and he was the highlight in, you know, the Medcast sketch and the dog park sketch. He has a great memorable line there. And then finally, I'm going to go with Heidi. I felt like she was kind of all over this episode and, was a great utility player in this episode.
Morgan, let's get your top 3.
Timothee, for sure. I'm going to go with Dismuke second. I agree. He really nailed it in Medcast and with his update character, Dog Park. He was in the cold open also. Yeah, I just feel like he had a great night. And then I'm going to do Michael Longfellow too, because he also had such a great night and he was definitely very memorable.
Okay, there you go. So let's bring up the top 5 MVP vote getters for week number 12. And as always, you can vote in the poll on social media every Monday after a new SNL episode. So here we go. Halle, you nailed this. Timothée Chalamet, number 1, 31% of the vote. Michael Longfellow, number 2, with 21% of the vote. So another big week for Michael Longfellow. Heidi Gardner here, number 3 at 11% of the vote, right ahead of Kenan Thompson at 10% of the vote in 4th place. So obviously we talked about that major role of his in the dog run sketch. And then Andrew Dismukes does come in 5th place here with 6%. So Timmy, Longfellow, Heidi, Kenan, and Dismukes are our top 5 for week number 12. All right, at this point of the show, we would turn our attention to week number 13. But because we are still, 2 calendar months away, so March 1st will be the next SNL episode, we probably won't find out who is hosting that show until February 16th, when it is tradition for SNL in an anniversary show to announce their next host as a part of that show. So we saw that with Dakota Johnson in SNL 40. So we will probably see that again this time. So we won't do too much speculation about March, but let's look ahead. And this will be our first instance of really talking about what we might see on February 16th, where SNL 50 will air. It will be a 3-hour special on Sunday the 16th from 8 to 11 p.m. featuring some of the greatest performers that have ever rocked Studio 8H with some musical performances and some sketches. So I like to go around and get some initial thoughts on what you are excited to see in just under 3 weeks from now. So Halle, starting with you.
Man, I'm just really excited to see some of the iconic cast members that I grew up with all back together, I assume, in the studio. And I know that was kind of an expectation going into the season, that there was going to be a lot of that in the season leading up to the big anniversary special. And then there wasn't as much of that as I think people expected. So to me, it's all coming in the special, at least I think. And this is kind of the first big anniversary that's happening in my SNL viewing prime. For the 40th, I was 12 years old, which is crazy to admit, but needless to say, I don't remember too much from that actual time period that was happening. I was vaguely aware of the situation. So I have my rewatch of the 40th special scheduled and ready to kind of hype myself up. And I'm just excited to finally get to in real time and in the moment witness such a big anniversary and see some of my favorite actors and comedians ever on the face of the planet come together. And hopefully bring back some of my favorite things ever. I'm really hoping for a digital short, maybe some of the other predictions. I know there was a whole predictions thing that a bunch of people did, John, and I couldn't pick. It was what do you want to see? And I was all of it. Give me all of it right now. I beg. So fingers crossed for a whole lot of that, which I'm sure will happen.
Sammy, let's get your initial thoughts on what you are excited to see on the 16th.
Yeah, I got to save some thoughts because I'm going to be on the preview show in a couple of weeks. But I will say SNL 40 was so special for me that they didn't do a 30 or a 30th anniversary show when I first started watching the show. For me, I guess my analog to that was they had been doing the SNL in the 90s documentary or the 80s documentary that. Those are the kind of things that really helped me learn the history of the show. So yeah, super excited 10 years later to be here, weeks away from SNL 50. I'm very curious from a production standpoint, what are they going to do to make this feel different from SNL 40, which at the time was the biggest celebration of, the history of the show, obviously, to that point. And they really did bring out a lot of the big guns. They had the Eddie Murphy moment. They had, so many things. And, I'm just most excited and curious to see how they're going to differentiate from that, because that special, we have clips now, we have YouTube, like that is so much more accessible than the older specials. So there's that. And then also would like to see, some of the people, since SNL 40 who have left the show, who, I don't think really have a big shot of coming back as a host. So, people like Bobby Moynihan, Taran Killam, Jay Farrow, Vanessa Bayer, that sort of lost generation of cast members who were still, killing it in the cast when SNL 40 was happening. I would like to see, a little bit of them, as well as, of course, my cast from, the Andy Samberg generation. So I'm so excited. I can't believe it's 2 weeks away.
Morgan, what about you? What are you excited to see?
I mean, no, I'm excited to just see almost like a little reunion with all the past cast members. I wonder which ones will be there, which won't be there. That will be interesting. Any special musical guests, celebrities, past hosts, newer people coming on in pop culture. Who knows what they're going to be doing? Yeah, I wonder also the flow and the production of it too. Kind of some new sketches. Are they going to do some old ones? Or are they going to do any fun, pre-tapes, musical appearances? Probably, I would love to see just something so different and out of the box. Also just things you're not expecting. I love that. But no, I'm very, very excited. I will be sat watching the entire thing. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see some of my favorite cast members come back. Obviously, some of my favorites are all the females. I miss Adie, I miss Vanessa Bayer, I miss my girl Kate, and obviously Kristen Wiig, just all those ladies. I mean, and Cecily, just all of them being back together, and just also with the new cast members, just seeing how that goes. Also just some of the special celebrities that may be making appearances. It's just going to be star-studded. It's going to be iconic. It's legendary. 50 years is just such a big deal. And I know that they're going to go full out. And I would assume they've been prepping and preparing for this for so long. And yeah, I'm so excited to see how it's going to be.
Without being hyperbolic, SNL 40 was the greatest night for me for watching television in my life. I just truly enjoyed and couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was totally expecting another clip show, and to get all of these sketches where we had Jane Curtin doing Weekend Update with Tina and Amy, you had Lorraine Newman in a Californian sketch, Chevy and Garrett, out together again, Aykroyd and Lorraine doing sketches. To me, there was so many moments here that was whoa, I can't believe these people are together and all of this is happening. And I have no idea what we're going to see that night, but I know it's going to be extremely special, because who knows? I don't know if SNL is going to do a 60th anniversary. Maybe the next one's the 75th. At that point, is Lauren still around? Probably not. Are a lot of the, people from the original era still around? I mean, not to get morbid, but I'm just saying that I don't know. This may be the last time that we're able to get so many of these people together to celebrate this show. So I am so excited for what they're going to do to pull out all the stops to have them on screen. And, when I watched that SNL 40, my one wish as a very big SNL fan at the time was that I would have watched every episode prior to SNL 40 so that I was fully caught up in time. And I'm very excited to say that I will have rewatched every single episode of SNL before SNL 50 that I've been doing besides all of this, also to prepare for everything you need to know and all of that stuff. But I just cannot wait. After going through and watching the entire series, this is just culminating in such a big moment. So we're going to have a lot of coverage of that. I'll tell you everything that's coming up for the next few weeks as we head towards the special and then afterwards. So tomorrow night, we have our By the Number show for Timothée Chalamet's episode. Mike will be live. He has a great episode planned for all of you for By the Numbers tomorrow. Thursday on our Patreon podcast feed, we will have the Patreon sketch breakdown. So the poll is up right now to vote, and that will be recorded and put up on Thursday for all of you, patreon.com/the SNL network. Next Monday night in our regular time slot for our Mondays, we will have our patron feedback show. So the sign up form for that will be open until Friday night. So if you're a patron and you want to sign up to podcast with us next Monday and talk about SNL 50 or anything you've seen during this 50th season, you could still sign up for a time slot. That will be there until Friday night. Mike Murray will be live with me next Monday for that one. Then the following Monday, Sammy alluded to it, we will have our SNL 50 preview show where we will talk through absolutely everything, including every single former cast member, who we think will be there, who will not be there, which big name hosts will be there, what we think they might do. So a lot of previewing going on for that following episode. And then we will have a hot take show live after that special. I don't know if we'll do anything for the Radio City thing on the Friday. I have been invited to the Radio City show on Friday, so I'm very excited and honored to attend that show. So I certainly will share my experience with all of you. So we'll be there for the hot take show. Then there'll be a roundtable on the Tuesday night. So 2 days after that special, there'll be a By the Number show. And then right now we're looking very tentatively to maybe getting some interviews at SNL 50 on the red carpet. So if we're able to get that, it's still up in the air, but if we're able to get that, we will also share those interviews with all of you after SNL 50. So a lot of things happening here. And then of course, we will head towards March and the rest of season 50. So to never miss everything we are doing here on the podcast, please subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. And you can follow us on all social platforms at the SNL Network on X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok still around, Blue Sky, Threads. We got everything going on there to keep you updated. So this will be a blast, such a fun month. And I'm so grateful to get to do that with all of you in the SNL community and everybody here on stage with me. So Halle, please tell the listeners if there's anywhere they could check out what you got going on. And thanks for joining us tonight.
I have had so much fun on this podcast. Thank you for having me, John. I don't really have any socials to promote, but if you don't already subscribe to the podcast, follow the podcast on everything. It's my favorite podcast of all time, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on it tonight. And you're gonna want to be in the loop on everything SNL 50 related. I have tweet notifications on for the podcast, and that's where I get so much information from. So that's my social push for the night. Thank you for having me, John.
Thank you, Halle, and thanks to your cat. Just a great addition to the podcast tonight. So thanks so much.
She's being a menace. I'm so sorry.
Don't apologize. It's been wonderful. We're pro animal here on the podcast. Sammy, thanks for joining us, man. Please tell the listeners where they could check out. You had a viral tweet this week, by the way. I just want to plug that as well.
I wasn't gonna plug it, but yeah, you can check out the viral tweet on X if you're still on that amazing platform. You can follow me there at that Sammy Kay on X, TikTok, and Instagram. And as John mentioned, I'll be on the SNL 50 preview show and the hot take show as well. So I'll have many hours of talking about this amazing night in SNL history. So excited for y'all to check that out.
And Morgan, thanks so much for jumping in and talking SNL with us tonight. Anywhere the listeners can check you out.
Thank you for having me. I'm so annoyed about my Wi-Fi going in and out. It's so frustrating when that happens, but thank you for letting me stick with it. And I had such a great time talking about this episode. It was a great episode, I thought. Definitely iconic. You can find me anywhere at Morgan Killoren. I'm on Instagram, TikTok. I think that's it. But no, I'm so excited to tune in on everything SNL 50. It's going to be awesome. Definitely will have my notifications on for the SNN. And I'm so excited for you, John, to be at the the Radio City show and just be in New York during when all this is going on. It's going to be so awesome to see all the content and everything. But thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I want to thank latenighter.com for being our presenting partner of the show tonight. They will have a ton of coverage heading up to SNL 50 as well. So go check out that website. And thanks to everybody in the chat for joining us. Such a lively chat on this Tuesday night. I was always worried with the time switch and the day switch if we were still going to get a great group to come and chat about the show. And you were all here. And it was a blast to get to read everything that you were putting in the chat throughout the show. So thanks to Halle, Sammy, and Morgan for joining us here tonight. My name is Jon Schneider from the Saturday Night Network, and we will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.